the area I serve, Williston, Watford, McKenzie County, Williams County, I think is the most supportive of small business entrepreneurship of any place in North Dakota, any place in the U.S., in my opinion.
Recorded live from the heart of the Bakken, it's the Williston Works Podcast.
Welcome to Season 7 of the Williston Works Podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. I'm your host, Anna Nelson, Executive Director of Williston Economic Development. Now, whether you're tuning in for the first time or you've been with us from the start, we're excited to continue bringing you in-depth conversations with entrepreneurs, small business owners, and investors shaping Williston, North Dakota. Now, for this week's episode, I'm so excited to welcome Keith Olson. He is the Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center, or SBDC. Now, Keith, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us and giving us an opportunity to talk about our great program in the Small Business Development Center and how we can help people in your region.
And we also have a familiar face joining us today, Cyrena Weeks, and we'll learn more about her role with SBDC in just a few minutes here. But first, let's get to know Keith. Now, I'm sure many of you know Keith very well, but for those who don't, can you just share a little bit about yourself and your role at SBDC and what experiences you bring to the table?
I've been with the SBDC since March 2003. Previous to that, I worked in economic development for 2 counties, and I've been doing this since 2003, working with a variety of businesses through the bust, through the boom, through the boom, through the bust, all the way up until now. Had a wide base of experiences before that with my own businesses, farming, growing potatoes, shipping them all over the country, so a good base in ag. And then now energy, having had this job through the oil exploration and activity and a lot of community experience with housing and those kinds of things. So a real wide base of experiences that help do this job, I guess.
How did you get your start in small business development and the economic growth here in Williston, but also in the region that you serve?
Back in 2003, the advisory committee, Gene Veter was on. And Gary Sukat obviously started this, I think, about 99, an office in Williston, because we used to be part of Minot. So actually the first couple months I worked on this, I was actually an employee in Minot State before Williston took the program over full time. Gene encouraged me to apply. I thought it would really fit my experiences with the economic development background and all the other business background, and applied and was fortunate enough to be hired, and I've been at the college ever since.
Yeah, it sounds like you were just the perfect candidate to come in and help all of these small businesses with your background. So we're excited to have you in this role. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk directly about the organization. So can you give us an overview of what is SBDC and how does it support local businesses in the region?
The Small Business Development Center is an initiative kind of that comes through SBA. The funding comes through SBA, and it's hosted by typically a university in the state. In our case, it's the University of North Dakota. That's where the lead center is. Some of the centers we have centers in Fargo, Grand Forks, Devil's Lake, Minot, Dickinson, smaller satellite center in Bowman, Bismarck. So basically our charter is to cover the entire state, all the counties in North Dakota. I cover McKenzie and Williams, and then we have Casey Lindsay, who works with us part-time through Tri-County, covers Divide County. Our job is to help assist entrepreneurs and business owners. I mean, everybody gets kind of the opinion that we're only for startups. We're probably half or more. I mean, we've been really fortunate in our region. We've been pretty much 50% people who haven't started to 50% who have started, which is probably a little bit different demographic than some of the state might see. We work with a lot more businesses to basically help with anything and everything that they need. It could be financing to business plans to trying to provide them some resources or directions if it's HR, marketing. Not necessarily my strong suits, but Cyrena and Casey are good in those areas. And I think what helps us is too with our region is we're pretty balanced now that we have 3 of us that can help with clients. So we're able to find the best fits for personality and type of project and all those kinds of things. We're low cost, which is no cost, but with that, the expectations are that the client is going to do their share and put the sweat equity into helping develop a plan that can go to the bank for financing or or if it's just simply a hobby business or a side business, it might develop into something, help them get all the pieces in place so they're legal and good to go.
There's so many things that go into starting a business, expanding a business that, you know, you can have the passion, the idea, but it's great for our community and for the state to have you guys to come in and help guide them through all of those technical pieces. So I'm going to introduce Cyrena really quickly, and then I'm going to go back to actually a follow-up question for you, Keith. But I want Cyrena to answer that one too. So Cyrena, we met you a few weeks ago when you talked about your role as executive director of the Tri-County Regional Development Council, but can you share with us now what your role is with SBDC?
Our office, Tri-County, has a contract with SBDC. So SBDC pays for our services to be able to meet with clients and kind of take some of that workload off of Keith. When he was a one-person office, it was a little overwhelming to be able to see all of the clients. We have a really high demand. And so that's what our office is here for, is just to take some of the weight off of him. And yeah, so that's my role, is I'm a business advisor with SBDC through that contract.
So between the two of you and everybody that works in this region, how does the SBDC help launch local businesses? And kind of like you touched on before, Keith, how do you help make sure that they get started off on that right foot right off the bat?
Well, sometimes, we go through the analysis and it might make sense to not start the business. So, I mean, it isn't always just getting started. Sometimes it's running through every scenario to make sure it's viable first. We have some unique challenges in our region with the high cost of everything doing business, higher cost of labor, hard to find spots. I mean, there's just a lot of things that our clients face that they might not in other parts of the country for sure. Probably not even in other parts of North Dakota. So there's probably a little bit of a due diligence that we have to go through when somebody wants to start something, just to make sure the numbers will support it. And then just, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Who's doing your bookkeeping? We really struggle, I think, for the most part, getting people to understand the importance sometimes of how important bookkeeping is and what that can do for them when it comes time to expand.
The feasibility, the making sure you have your finances in a row, making sure you have your business plan, like just, yeah, those fundamental pieces. I'm so grateful that you guys are here to help businesses with them. I mean, we have so many entrepreneurs here. We'll get to some numbers here in a little bit, but I mean, I've always been blown away by the amount of entrepreneurs that we have in Williston and in Western North Dakota. Keith, you had mentioned SBA. What is SBA?
SBA is a small business administration whose task is kind of through the federal government to provide access to capital for people to start businesses, not normally direct lending, but in the form of guarantees and a fallback or a safety net for banks that are making business loans.
When I hear SBA, I think of, is it 504 loans and
Yep.
things like that? So I imagine you work quite a bit with some of those financing options.
SBA's got 2 or 3 programs, but the majority of the SBA work that we've been doing is the 504, which is a building purchase. Not that it can't do equipment. And then they have the 7A, which is a guarantee on general business startup. In our area, probably 99% of the SBA stuff we do is 504s on building purchases because it fits so good with the Bank of North Dakota programs that we have. And they work hand in hand. They don't, they just make each other that much better. So if we can do a program that has both, that's about as good a financing package as you're going to find on buying a building, any place probably in the U.S.
So for any of our listeners who may have listened when Keith was on a previous season with Sean, Keith, you had mentioned that your office had the highest number of client requests in the whole state. Is that still the case?
Well, we probably have as good a demand or better demand on a per capita basis as anywhere. I mean, Fargo right now has 2 full-time staff people. So their client count is higher right now just because they have the ability to handle more. And I would say our demand is kind of stabled out. Like we consistently are seeing between 380 and 420 clients a year, which when I started this job in 2003, our goal was 100. So that gives you an idea of 150 was a huge year back when I started. And that's why it's been so good to have the help with Cyrena and Casey, because it's almost impossible to see 400 clients on your own and provide any level of service that's any good at all. So, because I do a lot of the stuff with the oil field and a lot of the number crunching, Cyrena is able to really get an opportunity, I think, to learn the process extremely well because she's able to work with all kinds of industries and a variety of experiences to build up to, it takes a long time to learn how to do some of this oil field specific stuff or put packages together that the banks, can have some trust and credibility with the numbers and all the different agencies we work with. And I think doing it the way we're doing it is really giving us an advantage I haven't had before.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Seeing the reports and you guys are just doing a tremendous job. Are there certain businesses that are a better fit with SBDC, or do you work with any type of business? Cyrena, let's actually start with you.
Yeah. So we really see any type of business, and I think that's what makes what we do so much fun because we just get the gamut of different possibilities. So it can be anything from like Keith has talked about those small startups that are just trying to register their business and get going, to those guys that are doing multi-million-dollar expansions, and Keith's working with them and getting the numbers together. So I love that we really do get a wide gamut of clients. One of the things that Tri-County was involved in over the last year was a regional food business center grant. And so that afforded us some training to be working more with agriculture clients. And that is not an area I had ever touched on before. So we even are able to touch on those kind of businesses also. And I just love that.
Very important here in North Dakota. And what about you, Keith? Do you have anything to add to that?
I guess my philosophy is if they find us, we're more than happy to give them the hour that we need to figure out what direction they need to go or, the process. I think it's important, even if what they're working on doesn't come through the first time, that they learn the process. And it's not as scary. It's not as, I mean, it's scary and it's overwhelming, but doesn't have to be as complicated as when people hear business plans, they break into a cold sweat, and it doesn't need to be that way.
So what about nonprofits? Can you help nonprofits, or is it strictly for-profit businesses that you work with?
There are certain nonprofits we can work with, like, daycares, and there are some nonprofits that have a for-profit component to them. But I mean, if somebody comes in, we will do our best to help them. And if it's not somebody that fits the SBDC profile, we try really hard to refer them to somebody that can help them so that we don't feel like their time was wasted.
I love that philosophy because you never know until you ask the questions. And so I'm glad that you kind of have that open door policy, we'll say.
The other problem is we get a lot of people that think they need to be a nonprofit because they want to chase grant dollars. And we're pretty careful to tell them that if you really thought this through, do you understand that a nonprofit has a board? And I think a lot of times we find a lot of people that may have come in to be a nonprofit and figure out, yeah, that's not a good choice for me. So we do have a fair amount of that too.
Very interesting. Yeah, just the questions and the ideas. And I think it would be fascinating to kind of take a deep dive and see like how ideas start and then where they end up. I mean, that's got to be so cool for you guys to see that whole process and be a part of it.
You never know when they come in where they're going to go, where it's going to end up. And every time I guess it's wrong. So it's easy to just have a super open mind, and some of the stuff I wouldn't think would work, they've turned out to turn into great businesses. So I think you just got to go through the process, run the numbers, and then see if they have the fortitude to carry it out.
Cyrena, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay.
What is the most common mistake you see new business owners make?
Okay, this is so easy. I love this one. The most common mistake is when I see a client that has paid for the services that we offer for no cost to them. And it is so easy when you're wanting to start a business and you're like, hey, I can do this. I just need to register my LLC. And you do a search, it brings up all of these sponsored sites that you have to pay for their services. So I've had clients come in that have spent $500-600 on getting their LLC. It just breaks my heart because that's exactly what we do for no cost. So the Secretary of State charges $135 to register an LLC, and that's a fee you can't get around. So the client will always end up with that fee. But that other $400 or $500 they've spent is what our SBDC office can just give to them. So I just always want people to tell each other about the SBDC office so we can offer those services at no cost. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one that I see. I know Keith's going to have some good ones here.
Yeah, Keith, what do you see?
Well, that's a good one. The number one, well, not there's multiple. It's easier to say than do sometimes, but bookkeeping, keeping accurate books, and not letting the business gets rolling to the point you start neglecting that. And I think the other thing is like when you're starting a single person business or an entrepreneur based business, how hard you got to work at it. If you thought working 40 hours before wasn't the best at a job, there's no 40-hour-a-week job that you're going to do on your own that's going to make it work. You got to put the time in. And I think we get a lot of clients to come in and say, yeah, I can work 7 days a week. And it's like, yeah, I know you can for about a month and then you're going to burn out. So it's building that realism back into them that you can't be all things to all people, and you're going to have a structure. You're going to have to put the time in, you're going to have to put the effort in, but it can't own you to the point that um, pretty soon you don't want to do it. So it's finding a balance of executing versus not burning out.
We all have a certain bandwidth, and so we need to be realistic about that. You kind of bring up an interesting point. You've been talking about the bookkeeping. So do you, in your talks with your clients, do you recommend getting a CPA or someone who can help them with their bookkeeping, or someone help with the marketing, or someone to help with HR, those different support services? Is that something you typically recommend, or does it just kind of depend on where the business is at?
I always try and recommend, if somebody comes in and they're a great mechanic, then they need to fix cars or trucks or pickups because that's what they're good at. A great example is if we get somebody in that's a good mechanic, then things really take off, and pretty soon they don't hire any help or get any help with bookkeeping. Then they're answering the phone, ordering parts, and pretty soon they don't have any time left for billable hours. So, obviously, once you flip the dial to business, you need a CPA that understands tax accounting because you don't want to miss any deductions. I mean, we have to be super careful about the legal and tax advice side as side of what we do. We can't provide it, but I always refer or encourage CPA on the tax side. And if you're going to sign a lease, you should have an attorney proof it of some kind somewhere. So bookkeeping, there's a lot of great places you can get bookkeeping outsourced, or I know it's hard to find because everybody's at max, not just with your business, but with everything. So it's just finding those resources and trying to help them understand that, we'll soon be to a point where half the bookkeeping is virtual probably. And there's ways to design a system that allows you to do that. But it's getting them to understand, do what you're good at, get help where you're not, and you'll do fine.
I feel like with the entrepreneurship mentality, like it's hard not to want to be jack of all trades, but then you risk being master of none, right? And like you started the business to be master of something. So that's a really good point. Let's talk a little bit about the business landscape. Now, Keith, you've mentioned you've seen boom and bust cycles. So how has the landscape changed in Williston since the beginning of your tenure here at SBDC?
Well, I'm usually, when I ask, I'm always make it known that I think that the area I serve, Williston, Watford, McKenzie County, Williams County, I think is the most supportive of small business entrepreneurship of any place in North Dakota, any place in the U.S., in my opinion, for the things we can do with the Star Fund, the Rough Rider Fund, the Bank of North Dakota. It's critical to get that out. But that being said, we have some challenges with, our rental space is going to be more expensive. Our help is going to be more expensive. There's a give and take, and it's very difficult not to. You have to stay the course, and it's not going to be easy to get through all the permitting and all the things you have to do to get open and not skip steps, and just getting them to the right place and understanding that most people want to help them be successful, but they have to be willing to put the time in. But I think that's the biggest thing is just, it's going to be more expensive to do anything here almost than any place else that I have any experience with, especially in North Dakota.
That's probably a fair assessment. Cyrena, what about you? You've spent most of your life and career here. What have you seen change in the economic landscape here?
Things that we see are people want so many opportunities right here in Williston, and all of us want those same opportunities. And so I think sometimes we see entrepreneurs that are grasping at some of those businesses that might not be a good fit because of the cost of doing the business, because of the cost of the space that they would need for that business. And You can't fault them for everyone wanting a big box store and a next, big thing so that we're not traveling further. But it's getting those kinds of companies to agree to coming into our space. It isn't for a lack of want within our community and need. So I think that's one of the financial things that I want people to know, um, that we have these great entrepreneurs and ideas, and I think all of us, whether we work for the county or the city, we want those things for everyone also.
Absolutely. I will second and third that all day long. So with these challenges, like we can't necessarily fix the cost of doing business here. So how do you guys work together to help these business owners navigate those challenges?
The other case is, everything being more expensive, you can typically charge more, or you can make more if you're putting the time in, or there is a balancing act between what you can earn and what it's going to cost you to make that money. So it's getting them to be just super realistic about what you're going to charge and make sure you have all those expenses accounted for in your plan and your cash flow, so you're not undercharging. And then doing a good enough assessment of what else is going on in the market so you know where that price point is. Um, Being way cheaper isn't always necessarily better. It doesn't mean you're going to get the work. And that's something that we go through with clients a lot of times too. If the market for X is $50, they think, well, if I'm $30, they have to use me. And sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes they can do it just fine at 47 because somebody sees that drop in price and they'll think, well, the quality's not going to be there, or they're desperate, or they're not going to put the effort in. So it's a balancing act for where that price point has to be to make sure you get the work. And then once you get the work, you servicing it, and then pretty soon it's more work than you can handle. So that's when we get into the whole, do I got to grow, or how do we make that happen?
Doing that analysis, making sure you're in line with the market, but also, we see this a lot with services. And I used to have my own service business. I get it. Like, you have a lot of anxiety about charging what you're actually worth. So I hope that all of the business owners know, charge what you're worth. And I'm sure, Cyrena, you're nodding your head. You can probably speak to that as well.
Absolutely. And when Keith was talking about that cost of goods piece, it just made me think about a client that we worked with that had done market research and said, this is what I'm going to charge for this item. And we started working through numbers, and I was saying, but have you added up what each of those ingredients cost? So what is your actual cost of goods on that item? And they started doing more research and bringing the numbers back and saying, well, I can't charge this. That doesn't even cover. I'm like, yes, that is what we do. That's what I want you to see is, okay, so maybe other markets are charging $7 for that item, but does that actually cover the cost of what you're putting into the thing that you're making? So I love that part.
That's huge. That's actually something. So when I worked with Lemonade Day, when I was with the chamber, we went through that too with the kids. Like, look at the cost of your lemons and your sugar and all of the different things, because that's going to help you determine what you charge. Like, it's such an important piece of the pie, and our business owners are so lucky to have you guys to help them navigate through that, because it's simple, but it's not all at the same time. Now, you both have kind of mentioned the Star Fund. So let's dive into that a little bit more. One thing that I really want to emphasize for our listeners, especially anybody who wants to utilize your services and these programs, we as Economic Development, we have the Star Fund board and we facilitate those programs. However, all of those applications need to originate with you guys in your office. So can you kind of walk us through, what do those programs look like? What do those processes look like? Keith, we'll start with you.
Well, the Star Fund has, three basic programs that we use. One is the mini match, which is the $5,000 startup grant. There's a lot of rules that go with it. You got to be in business, you got to have a lease and all those things, can't sublet. The other one is the interest buy down through the Bank of North Dakota, where every dollar that the Star Fund puts up towards your interest, the bank or the state puts in too, which makes it a really good program and kind of our preferred choice, because those projects are stronger because they've been through the bank, through the Bank of North Dakota. We vetted them. So those are the ones that have the highest probability of success, I think. And it's, the reason all those rules are there, it's taxpayer dollars as well. So we have to have those safeguards in place, and we have to make sure that somebody's looking through them. And, we're not all seeing and all knowing, obviously, but, somebody might get funded and you don't know to what tomorrow will bring. But, it's just taking them through the process, understanding the rules, the expectations, the reporting and everything that's going to come with it. And then making them understand that, we're not doing this because we're punishing them for applying for the grant. We're just trying to make sure they are aware of all the tools and resources we can provide them so we can take those dollars and make them stretch and grow.
Their best interest to help them succeed, as well as the best interest of, protecting those taxpayer dollars. Now, Cyrena, for someone considering starting a business here in Williston, what key advice would you offer them to set themselves up for long-term success?
One thing that I think entrepreneurs do is they need to learn from other people's mistakes. Be talking to other business owners, be talking to people who are in that same line of work, and finding out what worked and what didn't. And I think as an entrepreneur, I kind of see two lines of thinking: is they're afraid to tell people their ideas for fear that someone's going to steal them, or they're afraid of looking like an idiot. And they're neither one of those. It is so, so good to just ask the questions and get it out there. Find the answers. Doesn't matter if you feel like, oh, I suppose I should know this. No, how would any of us know without asking? So ask the questions, ask other entrepreneurs what they're doing. I remember we have a program I want to talk about. Brew Your Business is an area that we've created for entrepreneurs to come together and just talk through their questions and what worked for them and what didn't, and what were some of their struggles. And so Brew Your Business meets the second Wednesday of every month. We're at the Williston State College. We're in the Teton Lounge. We've got free coffee and just really great conversation. Networking with other entrepreneurs is really the goal of Brew Your Business. So at one of those events, there was a business owner. She owns a coffee shop, and she said, we were told don't get logoed cups for your first, I think it was 3 years of being in business. And she was like, oh, what? Of course you want logoed cups. Of course you want everything with your name on it so everyone sees that. And the coach that they were working with said that is an expense that is so hard to recover. And it is not a good advertising, a good marketing thing that's worth those dollars. So yes, it's wonderful. You logoed things, help people see that that's your business, that someone went to get coffee, but that's not an expense that they could recover easily. And so it wasn't necessary. And that was eye-opening for me. That was not information I had, but because of Brew Your Business and talking through these kind of points of things that entrepreneurs have learned, I thought, "Well, I just share that with anyone now that's looking for a coffee business, restaurant business. Watch those little tiny expenses that you don't have to spend money on." So I'm going to do one more plug for Brew Your Business. If anyone is interested in Brew Your Business, you can go to brewyourbusiness.com, and we've got all of our information on there. If you want to ask questions or be a presenter, if you have started up a business, we would love to have you. There's my plug.
I love it. I love that program. I love how it's coming together, how the entrepreneurs are sharing their stories, because you're right, that was kind of the catalyst for it, is being able to be candid about the journey, because it's not easy. A lot of entrepreneurs feel like they're on an island. And so to be able to share that with others is a tremendous asset. What about you, Keith? Do you have any advice for long-term success for your clients in the region?
Know what you're getting into, stay the course. There are resources. There aren't dumb questions. It's just, you can't be afraid to ask them. Like Cyrena said, you're not going to understand everything you're going to get hit with when you get started, especially if you've never had a business before. So there's a lot of great resources to help you. You just have to be willing to ask, and just the basics. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to put the time in, keep good records, and if you're super dedicated and it's a reasonably good idea, you will be successful.
And like you had said earlier, Keith, this isn't just you help them start up and then say good luck. Like, you are there for questions along the way. You're there to help along the way. What does that ongoing support look like in your office?
We've had a lot of clients in the last year that were in the last time in 2010 because our system keeps track way back to the beginning of time. We have a lot of clients that are in our system that, as something pops up there, and once they've been here and understand what we're all about, it's much easier to get them to ask for help a second time. So very common. Some of them are starting their second business. Some of them have sold a business. Some of them want help with whatever. It's just so people understand we're here for all through beginning of the business, the maturity of the business, the exit of the business, and all the way through and in between.
So even if the company didn't start in your office, they can come to you at
Anybody, anytime. Yep.
I think that's very important. I think a lot of people kind of think of SBDC as, well, they just help start businesses. Like, well, yeah, that's a huge part of what you do, but it's not all of it. And like you mentioned, Keith, 50% of or thereabouts of what you do is helping businesses expand.
Yeah, we've been pretty consistent between 35 and 50% of our client base every year is existing businesses. And we're also pretty unique in our region, and we are very close to 50-50 male to female year to year too. So it just indicates we have a super strong base of female entrepreneurs in our area.
That's been fun to see. And I think people don't really realize that about our region. And so that's a really cool statistic. So I'm glad you brought that up. So anything else? Did I miss anything that you think is really important for our listeners to know about the work that you do?
Me, it's just don't be afraid to call, ask for help. We're here to, and if we don't have the answer, we'll try to send you someplace that can help you, even if it's not, like I said, on the nonprofit side. We have resources that aren't ours, but we know where to send people. And I think that's, kind of maybe one of the misunderstood things is that we're not going to help every business or every entity that comes in, but I really think we can point them in a direction that will help them. So there's no wasted first appointment.
You can help them, or you can help them find the people to help them. Either way, you're sending them in the right direction. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time today and for everything that you do for our businesses. We appreciate you, appreciate the work that you do, and appreciate your time today.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Appreciate the support we get from the city of Williston and the Star Fund. We couldn't do it without them.
Thank you, guys. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for today's episode of Williston Works podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. Please like and subscribe for more interviews and content. And in the meantime, you can learn more about our office by visiting willistondevelopment.com. We'll see you next time on the Williston Works podcast.